Welcome to the September 12th, 2011 work session. Work sessions are a more informal setting to update the council on business items. No votes will be taken during a work session. Tonight there are two items on the agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you are required to fill out a public comment card and turn it in to the city clerk staff. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of each item. Once the item is called, no other public comment cards will be accepted. You know, Chris, do we have any public comment cards?
I haven't gotten any at this point.
Okay. I don't know that.
There's one person in the audience other than staff, and maybe.
And I don't think, Steve, you're an agenda item, so you don't have to. Okay. Is it all right with the, well, do we want to go ahead and start?
Well, we can do one of two different things.
Because Stacy's not back. We don't have the.
Yeah. We could either start the budget, and I could kind of highlight where we are at this point, and you've got some good decisions to make tonight. Maybe in the spirit of moving forward, let's do better world
okay.
books.
Do we know if Alan?
I have not heard from any council members that they're not going to be here.
Now Karen,
I guess Karen's not going to be here. She told me a couple weeks ago she wasn't going to be here. So
okay.
I have not heard.
Okay.
Let's start with Better World Books, if you're okay with that. Also want to let you know that the city attorney's traveling back from Athens as well, so he'll be here about 6:30 if we need him. I'm not sure that we actually need him on either of these two agenda items, so just to update as to where he is. I'll frame the...
actually, if Stacy's ready...
Are you ready?
Should we maybe do that?
Okay. We'll stay
as we get into it. For rhyme or reason.
Apologize.
No problem.
I have some copies for you guys.
We'll hand out the copies, and I'll kind of just get it started by saying what we've done over the last couple weeks since the last work session was to go through and tighten up the budget.
Do you mind waiting, Steve? All right. We got the budget on here first. We'll do that.
We went through the budget, and there was a lot of things that were kind of unknown that still just needed to be tightened down. We knew where we were at the time, particularly with health insurance. We knew that there was some more data to come in. We knew that the budget was going to shift some, but only shift for the better. We have been through a process since that first workshop of cleaning some stuff up and really tightening down that big unknown, which was the health care insurance that was at least initially showing a 26% increase over last year. I'm happy to report tonight that at the very worst, we've negotiated health care costs to flat over last year and actually represent a savings to the city of Milton, as well as in many cases savings to city employees. So we've been through a real good process. It does require that we switch providers, which is frankly okay at this point. The provider, after going out to bid, that will provide health care insurance for the employees of Milton is Blue Cross Blue Shield, and very satisfied with what we have to work with.
Just break in for Alan's sake. Just the only thing we talked about on the budget is health care costs. Staff has been able to keep those at no increase, but Chris was just saying they're changing providers.
Cool.
Stuff from Blue Cross.
Thank you.
Okay.
Health insurance, have we reduced the coverages?
We've not. With health care insurance, what you'll see when you go to bid is nobody really has a plan that's identical to another person's plan. And at this point, we don't insure 100 lives, so we don't have the ability to create our own plan in many circumstances. But there are a lot of, when you look at them on paper, there's a lot of comparability to it, where if office visit copay went from $10 to $25, prescription plan went from 15, 45, 60 to 10, 30, 60, or you see a little bit of give and take. I anticipate offering two plans this year to employees, one that is a more basic plan that has a deductible, one that employees will have the ability to buy up to if they choose to. The calculation of formulas as to the city's contribution to health care is exactly the same as we have had, calculated the same way we calculated it last year.
Right.
To give you a punchline, what we did, and I think you'll remember from the workshop, is with some of the savings that we anticipated in benefit reduction, what I asked y'all to at least explore with me was to, as I could bring that number down, allow me to look at a cost of living adjustment for the employees up to a figure of 2.5%. And I can tell you that the budget that you'll see in front of you does have that 2.5% in it. We've also been able to reduce benefit costs by $208,000. We've been able to reduce some attachment fees based on real numbers. We had the discussion, remember, about the attachment fees to the Fulton County system, the 800 megahertz system. We talked about $400 per radio. I was able to confirm that at least for one more fiscal year, the $173 and change per radio is a good figure, so that's just gotten more accurate. We budgeted for the big number, and we've been able to pare it down to the more accurate number. Long story short, with a couple of these trim downs, what we're faced with tonight is a budget that we found, let's just talk round numbers at this point, give or take $170,000 from the last time you've seen this budget that is available to be reprioritized into one-time capital projects if you all choose. As you remember from the first budget discussion, we elected to pull a couple of capital projects off of the shelf and get them done because of our very well-funded fund balance. One of the things that you all could do tonight is to say, Chris, great, you found $170,000. That's good. Let's just let that stay in the fund balance. That's one option. Another option is to decide that you all might now want to look at this balanced budget and say, you know, I'd really like to reprioritize that into capital projects, whether that's something related to parks and recreation and park enhancement, for example, if you want to maybe move forward with this acre corner that we have out here and do the enhancements on it, or whether you wanted to look at some of the stuff that we've talked about with respect to Bell Memorial Park, whether you want to look at the Hopewell property and actually do some work on it this year. You know, I've kind of toyed with what are some opportunities or some options that you might have for that $170,000 if you wanted to prioritize it. And I think that a very good place to put at least a portion of it, if you all choose to, would be into park enhancements. That capital line already exists. I've kind of put down on my little cheat sheet here, if I were to, I guess, recommend what you did with some of that money, would be to take the roughly $342,000 that's carryover in the park enhancement line currently and raise that to $500,000, raise that to $500,000, so that we have the opportunity this year to actually make some real differences in our parks. You know, this planning effort that we're in is going to end in about 120 days, and then we're going to be faced with that execute on the plan. I'd like to have us in the position that we could actually do that in this fiscal year, where we're not waiting until the next fiscal year to execute on a plan that's going to be done long before the fiscal year's over with. So,
Let me just break in for Julie's sake. We basically, Chris, the staff has been able to get the health insurance costs to stabilize it at the existing. So we're basically talking about a same budget we had before, but $170,000 more.
Nice.
So we're thinking about talking about some options to do with that money.
Good number.
it's a good number. You know, obviously there's other, we have so many, you know, directions we could go with it. It's kind of nice to be sitting here figuring out what we can potentially do that we weren't anticipating doing, as opposed to figuring out, you know, we're almost balanced, how do we get it, that final bit there?
Out of all those options you've thrown out, there's a line item we can put it in that would allow us flexibility throughout the year to decide what we do with it, correct?
That's right. That's right.
Then if we don't use it, we can carry it over or.
Right. Well, and I guess
appropriate
if there's a line to put it in, if we put it in park enhancements, I mean, I go back to what's the driving force of this that we spent so much time on, and that, you know, that was a big issue. And keeping in mind that there are other priorities, but what we have, if we're going to reappropriate it, it needs to be to one-time capital, right? So it's not as though we can say, gosh, I'd love to put 2 more police officers on the street. It's not eligible to do that, even though I'd love to do that with it, because we could still use more of those people. But this money isn't eligible for that. This money would be eligible for some type of capital improvement.
What's the take on the council with that? Is that
That's
sounds pretty good? And that way it gives us some flexibility and. Okay.
I think to your point, citizens are really expecting some.
Good.
So I guess beyond that then, the budget itself hasn't, since the first time you've seen it and since the public hearing of the other night, it hasn't changed much, other than to only get better. So
Maybe we should have another work session between.
Do what?
Too bad we can't have another work session between now and then.
Just
Get
keep
better.
doing
Just keep it riding.
Keep doing Salesforce going the other way. Better stuff.
Is there anything that, as y'all have had this in your hand and you've looked at it and gone through, is there any questions that you have that maybe is that a good place
Yeah.
to maybe let this work session go?
And
Let's
again-
answer questions. You got your whole staff here ready to.
Yeah, if you have any questions, and again, you've still got time if you've got some questions for staff after the meeting and before we vote on this. So. Anybody got any questions now, though, they might like to ask?
I got it all throughout the budget here. How do you want to handle it? You want to go department by department?
Yeah. If you've got questions
We
like
can.
that,
I can just call the department name and then.
Yeah.
And yeah, Bill, you probably have more than because you weren't at the first budget workshop, right?
But
So
I spent some time.
did you spend some
my
time in
Bible.
Ottawa looking at the budget?
That's really
So let's start with mayor and council then, and see if there's any questions in the mayor and council portion of the budget.
Okay.
Just starting with a general fund. Can you explain miscellaneous revenue? You've probably gone over it before, but I'm always looking at budgets, the words miscellaneous and other
I'll handle it.
always need explaining, I think, especially when there are magnitudes of several thousands dollars.
Right, a portion of that is the build-out refund. Whenever we built this place out, there was a portion of money that was set aside for the build-out. We got a refund back from that because it didn't cost as much.
Right.
And so we had to allocate that over 5 years, over the term of the lease. And another portion of that is cell tower lease. We are now getting
Right.
cell tower lease payments.
So is that in the other financing sources then, the cell towers?
That is in, let me get to the revenues. Hold on just a moment. Other miscellaneous revenue is the build-out refund. The cell tower lease is still in the miscellaneous revenue, but it's broken out. If you're looking at the revenue spreadsheet,
Right.
it's broken out in the same line item.
Excuse me, going to mayor and council. Why are going under dues and fees, GMA annual fees, why is that double?
It's population-based. One of those hits you get now that we're recognized for a larger population, that's how those fees are calculated.
Good news, bad news.
Over to city clerk, under professional fees, election costs, why were there costs actual costs in 2010?
Election fees.
I've got to find you here. Say
Election
you're in dues and fees.
Next, under employee benefits, professional fees, election costs. Then
There was an election in 2010.
2009.
FY 2010.
Yeah.
With it being a November election.
And the 79,000, does that include the cost of runoff in it?
Yes, it does, and so we will be getting a refund for that.
Right.
That's a good, and we would account for that in there.
What was there, $14,000, $15,000 in there?
Oh, it's bigger than that.
It's $36,593.
For the runoff.
Bill, while we're on this, do you mind if I ask a
No,
question?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Did we ever decide what we're going to do with the stipend?
Are you talking the mayor and council stipend?
Yes.
I've got it in the budget at this point at $2,000 for council members, $3,000 for the mayor.
And I have in my notes from my last work session, 1,500 ? So
If that's one I've got to kind of look to y'all for. Do what?
I believe it's in the,
That's not in. I don't think that one's in the.
Isn't it in the charter?
Yeah, I think it is in the charter.
It was in the charter.
Okay, then that one's going to be driven by the charter, if it's in the charter. I want to say it called out a mayor stipend. I don't know that they called out a council member stipend, but I'll have to reread.
You can just double check that.
Yeah, I'll double check it. Yeah, we're not going to be in violation of the charter, I'll tell you that. I don't know what it says, but whatever it says, what we're going to do.
Going under finance, audit fees, we're going to put that out to an RFP again?
Not this year, because we had one more year left, because they gave us pricing based on 2 years past the 3-year audit that we had with them.
Right.
So next year we will.
Going on to legal. As of the end of June, we spent 130, and we're projecting 220 this year. We spoke about it briefly the last time. I guess tonight's an example, too. Do we really need legal representation on every work session?
Depends on what the agenda items are. Obviously, I mean, I think we had a work session, maybe the last one or the one before, that there was nothing on it that I thought we needed one, so I just called and said, I don't need you tonight. And that, you know, some of that responsibility falls on me to decide if we need or we don't need. You know, legal's one of those hard ones to budget for, because I always budget for that. And you look at those monthly bills and you say, well, except for X, that would have been a normal bill. Well, there's always an except for X. So, you know, we've been very conservative with our legal fees this year, which is why you see us anticipating still conservatively, but anticipating a decrease, because we have decreased this year. It's also one of those things that you can get a gotcha with real quick. So that was my rationale at saying, I think we're coming down. I don't want to take it down too far that we all of a sudden overspend it.
And I talked to Ken about it too. I mean, we've definitely gotten our monthly bills down a whole lot from what they used to be. But like Chris says, we're, you know, do better at the 6 months or at the end of the year to have more and a lot, do something with it versus not have anything in there if we get hit with something that we're not prepared for.
That's one of those.
So
items.
we're probably, you know, if things are just status quo, we're not going to spend that much. But if, you know, we get hit with something, then we're going to have to add some money to it if we don't put that in.
Going on to IT.
Okay.
And halfway down the sheet, in code. We spent nothing on it in 2009, 10, and so far in 11 we haven't spent anything.
It's a new software package that has an annual maintenance that you see existing in this fiscal year will be spent before so our annual will kick in next year. Okay, but that's one of the new software packages that we implemented.
So this is not something that Johns Creek is carrying.
This won't. No. These are what you see under maintenance contracts are the software packages that we own and that we hold licenses to, and we want to be the license holder, so that you know, you just never want to be in a position that you don't own your own data.
Oh yeah. On IT, IGA with Johns Creek, have a $20,000 increase in that this year. Was that in our agreement?
It is.
Also, it covers the full year. So last year it
Right.
covered.
That's not. It's the spread is not as big as it looks. There is a contemplated increase in the IGA.
Okay.
Although it's not that full. It's not that full amount because the dollar figures from this fiscal year didn't represent a full fiscal year.
Gotcha. Going down below that, apparently some more software below that. L3 Communications, EMS training aids.
That's right.
No expenses. In the prior years, we're budgeting a little over $8,000 this year.
L3 Communication replaces and will replace over time ICOP Digital. You'll see ICOP Digital doesn't have any funding in it.
Okay.
L3 is the replacement's in-car police video cameras.
Got it.
EMS training aids was one of the new initiatives that we talked about that is kind of a computer-based training module. So it's a contemplated new initiative.
On the next page, here again, computer software and hardware, that's our own in-house expense.
That's right. Yeah, very, that IGA with Johns Creek is almost purely a labor IGA.
In the different departments, at the top, salaries and wages, could you tell me in each one of the different departments the number of personnel covered?
Sure. Where do you want to start?
I'm on HR.
If you go through, this, in your, it might be helpful that if you go to what we just got
Okay.
tonight, start on page 1, and if you'll go to page 3, every department, it specifies how many people are in that department, if that's helpful to see it on paper. Or you can see the city manager department contemplates 2, the city clerk's office contemplates 3.
So it's in the narrative?
Yeah, the budget
Okay.
summary by department.
Then
general
on page
fund.
3.
It might just be easier to see it than, I can go through and call out numbers if you
No.
want, but
I'll figure that out.
Yeah, see, it lists the different departments in each.
Right.
Different
Gotcha.
personnel in each department.
On risk management, particularly on pollution coverage, did we find out the extent of the coverage on that policy?
we did. Sam can speak to that.
It is.
Come on up, Sam, to the mic.
It's $1 million per incident and $2 million aggregate for each year.
1 million per incident and what?
2 million
2 million.
total.
Aggregate.
Okay.
Are there any exceptions or exclusions?
Not that I'm aware of. If something was on the books and we picked up the coverage, it's covered. And there's a myriad of things, including hazmat incidences, would be covered. And it covers just about all pollution control spills, that type of thing.
I can give you a real world example if we probably run a risk of needing coverage like that, as if, and hopefully we won't find one, but if we find the first meth lab in Milton anywhere, the cleanup of one of those will well exceed the insurance coverage against that type of an incident. And I know we don't want to think that sounds like something we're going to find here, but
Just don't dump it in the stream if you do find it.
that's when Ken and I discussed whether or not this was a decent add-on for the city from an insurance perspective, the real world told us that it was a decent expenditure to protect against something that could be very, very expensive.
You could even have an accident with one of the fire stations,
Sure.
with the fuel tanks.
Yeah.
Have an accident with that and leak or something, and that could cost a lot of money.
And just on that same topic, if I'm not mistaken, Chris, we talked last week about whether or not that had been vetted in terms of other companies, et cetera, and it was my understanding that you guys had obviously looked to see if there was any way to reduce that cost, and that was the best deal, if you would, for the amount of insurance.
This was, yes, and in answer to your question, yes.
Okay, Sam, thank you.
Thank you.
Going on to general government buildings. Other purchase services. What is that? Cleaning services? 36,000 budgeted.
Common area maintenance.
Oh,
Cans
it's
for
part of
this
the
building.
lease, okay.
Yeah, because it'll still be in the lease.
Under the police department, vehicle repair and maintenance. It's, I guess you attribute that to the aging of the vehicle.
Well, I attribute it to the fact that our vehicles are no longer under warranty. So, this first set is really getting towards, if it's not already reached it to some degree, end of life. Now that we've been around for 5 years, that's about the expected life of a police car. So, yes, number one, aging fleet. Number two, vehicles out of warranty.
On the second page, third way down the page, maintenance contracts,
Okay.
going in property and evidence, IGA, and 800 megahertz fees to Fulton County. You explained that earlier. Is that right?
I did, yes.
Okay. So the property and evidence, IGA. No, I didn't have it. I'm sorry. Inmate services, line item right above that. Nothing incurred in the last 3 fiscal years. We're budgeting $5,000 this year.
We are, because that we have with our agreement with the sheriff's office that potential exposure. The sheriff's never sent us a bill, so we've never paid a bill. We're happy to pay one if it ever shows up.
And what is the Celebrate system?
Oh, I could. Deb, can you do justice to that really, really quickly for me, or I can read it?
That'd be a good question for Captain Weaver here.
I'm going to read.
You have the initiative?
I do. I've got the initiative. I'm going to read it. It has something to do with detectiving. How about, Bill, if we get them to explain it in detail, and we'll send you an email.
That's fine. Going down the bottom of the page, under cameras, got an increase in, no, we didn't. Got a decrease. We spent 30.
What we're
budgeting
doing
20.
there is as we replace in-car video cameras, we're moving to the L3 system, which you captured in the IT thing. ICOP Digital, which is the camera system that we had in our car, did not fare well as a company and no longer exists as a company going forward. So this is kind of one of those mandatory changes that we need to over time migrate to a system that actually is still a business.
Same way with the radios, upgrading radios.
No, that doesn't represent an upgrade. Believe it or not, that cost represents kind of a line item that for radios, if we need to replace them, they're about I guess half. That $9,000 would account for about 2.5 radios if we had either repairs or had to replace portable radios on the belt.
But we've only spent in past years.
Right. We try not to break them.
That's good.
But that's one of those things. They're not a policing. Sometimes a full contact sport, and they don't always fare well. But it's something we can't be without. So that's almost one of those things you conservatively budget for on the outside that says, "Gosh, in the next year, if we had to replace 3, this kind of gets us there." Hopefully, again, we won't have to. Okay, I'm reading Celebrate now. It deals with capturing data,
Forensic
information
cell
from
phone
cellular
data.
phones. And I got to tell you, there's a cell phone used in just about every crime these days because everybody has one. So
Maybe Joe can answer that a little bit.
Yeah, it does transfer data directly off the phone, allows the police to look at numbers that were dialed, when they were dialed, SMS texts that were sent, those kinds of things. It pulls the information off the phone and puts it in a database so that it's easier to look at, so you don't have to know the intricacies of the particular phone that you're dealing with. So, I think, yeah.
you were convincing if you're
Yeah, man, good story.
Here's where we asked to purchase the Celebrate system last year, and the $3,000 for this year's the maintenance cost for this year.
I would say that my experience has been that's extremely valuable,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
extremely helpful in crime prevention.
That pretty much covers my questions. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Julie?
Thank you, sir. Chris, you and I talked about this a little bit, kind of between our last meetings. In terms of tornado sirens, it's been something that I think citizens have been concerned about for a number of years, and obviously I've raised it as we go through budget cycles. It's my understanding that there are some other avenues, though, that might be more cost-effective and also provide better safety in terms of weather services, in terms of radio
Radios.
services. But could we talk about that? Because I am interested in whether or not we could pursue, I know we talked about whether or not grants might be an opportunity, and it's a kind of low-hanging fruit, but I'd like us to at least consider it as a line item.
Yeah, I'd like us to explore it. You know, we did talk about tornado sirens and whether you believe in tornado. I think maybe as a part of a established system, if you've all of a sudden, if you've already done one or two things, then maybe that's a third step. I don't know that is the step right out of the box anymore. Tornado sirens have their place. Some of the problems with them are, you know, when do they sound? Are they sounded too often so that they become the car alarm that nobody pays attention to? What's the criteria to sound them? What's the criteria not to sound them, and then risk that something might happen in its place? We talked, and I could absolutely get behind and would be willing to explore a more substantial severe weather radio campaign in Milton. Something that gets severe weather radios in as many locations as possible. I mean, the sirens make noise. Radio monitors the same information, but actually alerts people and tells them, you know, there's words that come out of it other than just a noise. And if we're really interested in doing something across Milton, I think that that's the chance of saving lives. I think severe weather radios is where my preference would be. And if you all as a council want us to look at that and figure, you know, and see what.
When you say severe weather radios, what are you talking about? What kind of a program are you trying to describe by just saying that a radio in every house?
Mm-hmm. Kind of like almost a smoke detector in every house.
Okay.
I think it's a two-pronged. I mean, as we've talked, I think the tendency is to want to lean towards a tornado siren initially because it's what some of our neighboring communities have. And in the past, we've talked about what sort of range those existing sirens have versus the gaps, because there are gaps. Cherokee has them, Alpharetta has them, Roswell has them. We don't have them. And so as we had talked, obviously there's a much higher expense for tornado sirens, and yet, however we get there, I just personally believe that we need to do more, because we have had some, obviously, in Milton, and we've escaped a few. But I think at a minimum, I would just ask for consideration of at least a communication program that, you know, with Jason's help, that we could push out information that says, here's what we should be doing, here's some opportunities. To your point, maybe we could look at acquiring or figuring out a way, a low-cost provider where families could go and purchase them, or have a weekend, you know, where it's an educational sort of forum. I guess I'm still not convinced that sometimes a tornado siren isn't still helpful, because there's people that aren't in their homes. You know, there might be school kids that are leaving Northwestern or Milton or Hopewell or somewhere, and they're not home to hear a radio. But whatever we do, I'd like to see us pursue something, because I think that we've had enough weather patterns that indicate that we're an area that has risk.
You know, lightning detector.
Yes, that would be nice.
Use
Just
a
don't
lightning
hold
rod
up a
program.
one iron.
Yeah, you know, and I go back to say, you know, not that tornado sirens aren't valuable.
Right.
They are. I think they're valuable is maybe a second or a third step. If you really want to get big bang quick, it is something along the lines of seeing if we can find a provider that, you know, I'm not saying that we would find a way to go door to door and hand out.
Right, we could have a look, if they come to our fire stations a Saturday, it's an educational form, we push it out and then say these are available, or we get somebody.
It'd be something that we can buy so cheap because we could buy in you know, quantities of scale, and we could offer them, you know, pennies on the dollar compared to what they could go to the store and buy one for. I don't know that level of
Right.
detail at this point, but you know, to the extent that if that's something that we want to explore, and I can get behind that. I think that makes a whole lot of sense to explore.
Yeah, but to Julie, I mean, there's got to have been some studies done, cities other than Milton, where the statistics show where people are when these types of things happen. What's the percentage of people that would be in their homes? what's the percentage of people that would be, out of contact? So I think the goal would be, and there's got to be somebody that's laid the groundwork for emergency preparedness someplace else that has a program of, if you want to help your citizens, and prevent loss, during these kinds of events, here are the steps that you need to take. So, I mean, the GMA probably has,
Storm-ready community.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Unfortunately, cities don't qualify for it. The designation has to happen at the county level. But a lot of the tenets of the storm-ready community are deliverable.
so Fulton County is even now preparing this plan and communicating
I
with
think
you
we've
on what
all-
needs to happen? Oh, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
You'll see the Fulton County Hazard Mitigation report at your next meeting on Monday. But, I guess what I could say at this point is let us, as we get some of these projects closed up, let us look at pulling that one off and getting some best case examples. No, we don't have to pioneer the thing, I can
Right,
assure you.
right.
This has been pioneered before, so.
But just coming up with some sort of approach that could be low cost and/or if there's some things that's a compilation of communication, but also radios, and, maybe we look at some of these statistics, and maybe there's some other things we could do.
And next week I'll be with city and county managers from across the nation, and, who knows, there might be a new technology that has emerged in this emergency management world that I'll come across.
Maybe that is something that, you could take a look at and next, when you have time to look at it, then report back to us under some reports and see if there's some options that we can pursue that make sense.
I'd like to hear the chief's commentary on that whole issue and how effective it is.
Radios are better.
Yeah.
But something is better than nothing, so.
Well, how far can you go to protect people?
Well, hopefully, if nothing else, a communication program that says these are the things that are very much like what we do with fire alarms, because not everybody thinks about them. And so I think that it's a very low cost, pretty effective way. If nothing else, if we communicate out what's available. My second question just has to do with Public Works.
Let me break into, I think, it sounds like reading people's faces and comments that is something that pretty much everybody's interested in at least hearing about. Okay.
Sure. Got it.
Thank you, Mayor. Just another quick question was on Public Works, and we've talked about this in the past, as it relates to the Birmingham and Providence intersection. Obviously, we have that budgeted fully. As we move forward with that, just between now and when construction and implementation is in place, we've discussed in the past whether or not some sort of flashing mechanism as an interim solution would be an option, both if you're headed north as well as headed south before you get to that intersection. And I just wondered if we had explored that any further. My recollection is when we went through that process before, we talked about trying to get maybe an idea as to what the cost could be for that sort of a flashing mechanism, because it's obviously still a pretty dangerous intersection.
But we haven't explored it any more than we have in the past. Those discussions have occurred with CDOT in the past, looking at that from a safety standpoint. And I think what's out there now is what they felt was reasonable and necessary to protect that particular intersection. So there isn't anything beyond the current improvements that's in this upcoming project.
And I guess that was just my only question, is there, even if it's a portable sort of sign, I know we've used that in other places, and Chris, I don't know if that makes sense in terms of, again, if we just had a cost estimate, again, if you're headed north on Birmingham Highway as well as south, because you get to that crest, I'm just wondering if a flashing, something very similar to what's on Bowen Road over in Cherokee, not Cherokee, I'm sorry, over near Woodstock.
Beyond what was already GDOT. And any of that would be subject to GDOT's approval.
Sure.
And certainly at our own cost.
Right.
With the upcoming project.
Is that something that just before we get to closure on our budget, especially because we have a positive situation this year, we could at least just maybe ask what the cost would be? And I know we may not have a final answer, but I just would be curious, what does that sort of flashing mechanism cost?
And by flashing mechanism.
I mean, just like a sign that would say, a warning sign, something that, and it wouldn't be on all the time, but just when a car approaches that intersection to remind folks that there is a dangerous intersection ahead.
Sure, we can do that.
Just if we had an idea of what that cost would be.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions?
I've got a general question, so not about a specific it's a category across all these. Are we still going through these tabs, or?
Well, if you have any questions on them, yes. But Alan, did you have a specific?
I have two or three.
Okay, go
Let's
ahead.
go with that.
Under the capital projects fund, the last page, capital request 2012, and I know we've talked about this a couple times, Chris, as far as Crabapple. And in terms of taking the visioning plan that was done by Lou Oliver and turning it into reality, and we're starting with transportation, moving to architectural issues and that kind of thing. Is that why we're leaving the 30,253 there, and that we don't know what we might use that for in the future to make that plan become a reality?
I'm on the capital request.
Oh, it's not the last page. I apologize. It's the fifth page.
The capital projects fund.
Yes, fifth page. Crabapple Master Plan, 30,253. And maybe that is, maybe I'm reading this wrong, because if I maybe looking at it, we're going to spend that 30,253 by the end of the fiscal year.
30,253, and then the project expenditure of 30,253. That's the line item counting.
Zero. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And then you made the comment regarding the Highway 9 Master Plan that the LCI will take the place of this and more, was your comment.
That is correct.
And the LCI goes all the way up to the Forsyth County line?
It goes, the LCI study area stops at Bethany Road.
Bethany Bend?
Bethany Bend. It's
Okay.
Bethany Bend Road.
Uh-oh.
Not
Don't
to be-
start that.
Okay. So what would our plans then be for the entire Highway 9 overlay?
Well, I think probably the first thing to do is to see what comes out of this LCI. And then if we need to master plan the remaining little portion that exists, I think we're going to get the spirit of what comes out of this larger planning study to figure out if that's something that can be staff-driven for the remainder of that mile that's up there.
Mhm.
And we very likely have that talent in-house to be able to
Okay.
do that.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, Chris, I was just wondering, do you happen to know how many city governments or county governments in the state still support a pension program that's similar to the one that we have available to our employees?
Just to give you a number, I don't know. No, it is still supported in many cities across the state. There's still some cities there's some cities that have moved away from it. Ours is a very conservative plan. It's very well funded, and that's meaning that we've made the contributions that we need to make to it, so that we're not in a position of risk at this point. We've watched the actuarials every year, and we've obviously had a presentation to the council within the last year on it, and we're happy to do that every year to kind of watch it as it evolves. There was I guess the direction that we were given after meeting with the actuary was that our plan was very conservative, very well funded, and probably was the best thing for us to continue with, at least in the short term. And that doesn't mean that we are not mindful of the fact that other governments have made bad choices with their defined benefit. But as far as a recommendation at this point, the recommendation that we've gotten from the people that we rely upon as experts feel as though it probably is a plan, honestly, that is cheaper to fund than providing some type of a comparable plan that's a DC.
Well, I got challenged by a citizen not too long ago that the city of Milton is one of two municipalities that support this. And I didn't have
That
the
wouldn't be
facts
correct.
to back
Sam,
up
do you
a
have the
discussion.
It's right here.
Oh, you've got the number?
Yeah, GMA published it. this back in
240.
February. 240 cities and authorities.
It's almost half city.
So these are, well, I don't want to ask you about that.
I got the list of all 240 that participate in the state in the PB plan.
So, and you guys made a presentation on this about a year and a half ago. I remember at the time, I was trying to take in everything else that was going on. So maybe I didn't catch all the details that I needed to. but our employees right now are given options in terms of whether or not they participate in this or whether they just participate in like a regular 401k. Is that correct?
Our employees participate in the DB plan and have an option in a DC plan.
Okay.
Defined benefit versus defined compensation.
Okay,
Contribution.
so it's up to our employees as to which they choose.
No, our employees participate in the defined benefit. So they are in because the city makes a contribution into that.
Okay.
So there's participation in the DB. There's an option to participate in the DC.
Oh, on top of.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, we
So
have a
the-
DC option.
Okay.
So we, at this point, have both.
Okay.
Although in the DC, our employer
Clear as
match
mud.
is not as
Well,
comparable as some of the other cities around us, although that's something that,
yeah, I just know
Work
that
on
this
that,
is
but-
something that's, you usually get somebody who's, spend a little bit more time discussing this with other folks, and I got bombarded with some questions that I just didn't know how to answer.
You've got some great data and some great information. If send somebody our way if they have that question, and we'll let them see the black and white of the numbers. And it's not that there's anything. There's nothing secret there. It's all wide open for everybody.
And you know what,
Right.
now I would offer that same advice, because I get hit with a lot of questions from stuff that staff knows a lot more about than I do, and they're very helpful, and, just tell the citizen, you know what, I'll get back with you and get the information, and staff will help get it to them, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm happy
This is
to.
it.
Again, that's something that we are mindful of the fact that has caused problems in other locations, and fortunately, we started out with an ultra conservative DB. Aaron put together of the defined benefits he could put together. It was an ultra conservative defined benefit, meaning that the exposure to the city is minimal. It was a well crafted, and kudos to him for putting that type of a DB together. It was well crafted in a manner which protects the city.
Okay. All right.
I also want to just mention that we've gone here through the charter. Stacy, I've had her on a hunt.
I couldn't find it.
Stipend
Yeah.
is not mentioned.
No.
Salary is mentioned, but stipend is not.
Yeah.
Evidently, that was the original council put that price into ordinance to begin with, but it's been adjusted over time. I remember Billy Beckett adjusted his some, and we brought it back down last year.
We're recommending to bring it back down this year. But the number that was in there last year was actually Billy's number. He went to 2720. I've just not historically seen you all use 2720. And, to carry liability on the books that there's not a real intention on spending is almost having a budget that has numbers in it that we know are just kind of placeholders. So, I'll look for you to guide me on that. I'll, put in there, it's your stipend, and there should be some stipend money in there because you didn't get in. You're not sitting here representing the city, recognizing that you should have the ability to have a phone or a computer or take somebody to a business lunch. I mean, you should be able to do that. So you just kind of tell me what number you all as a group think is good there, and that's what we'll put in there.
Maybe what would help is if we could get some guidelines as to what's an allowable expense.
Yeah, we can do that. It's written in our. That's written. I could send that. It's in the financial management policies, and I think it's probably in our employee handbook as well. But I can get you guidelines on what is eligible.
Yeah, 'cause that'd be the same as employee.
Yeah.
Now,
We'll
Chris,
email it to you.
if we go to fall trainings or leadership training down in St. Simon's Island or something like that, does that come out of our stipend, or is there some kind of training bucket for that?
Well, we fund in training, in professional development. We fund the ones that are GMA kind of delivered, meaning
In a
GMA winter,
training bucket.
GMA, I
Okay.
think they call GMA winter, they call it Mayor's Day,
Mm-hmm.
and GMA
Fall,
summer.
and they have a fall one.
If you wanted to seek training opportunities outside of those two, that would be an
Like I went up to
allowable
Rome.
stipend
I went up to
expense.
Rome one year and took something, meetings and parliamentary procedures or something, and I didn't know if that came out of the stipend or if it came out of training. It was fall training, and like they're having one in what was the town that got hit with the tornado?
Ringgold.
Ringgold. That one too, but in our state.
Yeah, I'd pull that. You see there's an elected officials training line item. I would pull your registration out of that, and I would pull your travel such that you had
Out
travel
of the stipend.
Out of your travel. No, you can see there's a line item in your travel. You've got
Okay.
general travel and you've got elected officials training. So the registration, for example, would come out of the training. If the hotel, if it was required, the mileage, et cetera, would come out of travel.
Okay.
Okay, so
I guess
that
that's
attaches
the
to
point
two
that I was getting to when Alan brought it up, is there are other training opportunities out there that ARC provides, and Council for Quality Growth and other organizations like that. So are you saying that would come out of stipend or
Like this one.
other
Well,
training?
to the extent that there's dollars that are in travel and training, that's where I would look first. You know, to the extent that those, that's another number like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, you pick a number and, you know, sometimes you match it, and sometimes you all decide this year is your year to get trained, and all of a sudden haven't budgeted enough. So preference would be to pull it out of travel and training. If I'm never going to get in the way of you all going to class. So I think that's great when you do. So, you know, to the extent that I've got to find a way to fund some professional development,
Okay, I need 16 hours of continuing education this year. Would you cover that?
not if it's related to you being an engineer. If it's related to you being a council member, I got it.
It's organic farming. He's looking for things to do in retirement.
Mayor, one quick question.
Okay, Julie?
Safer, I'm sorry, on Public Works, I meant to ask this as well. On the safer routes to school, Carter, you may have given us an update in terms of the time
Yeah.
frame. Just when is that next cycle, and when do we know whether or not we'll be part of that next cycle?
The next application cycle?
Yes.
They just had one. I'm not sure when the next one will start.
Do we know when we'll hear?
We were not selected. We did a joint application with the city of Alpharetta.
Okay.
Was not selected in the last round. Our current project is scheduled to begin. The project was awarded and is scheduled to begin most likely in October.
Terrific. So that will begin in October, okay.
Okay.
And then I'm assuming that we'll, of course, in this next cycle, reapply.
We always look.
We always look for those grants, yes. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? We did talk briefly about legal and expenses of attorneys at work session, so with two attorneys here, I'm going to ask that you guys step out.
Can I just also, Council, as we close this discussion, can I just ask that if you have additional questions other than the ones that I've written down, I'm going to respond back to. If you come up with additional questions, could you get those to me this week by Friday? This is scheduled for your vote next Monday. I travel out of state on Saturday. I won't be with you next Monday, but I'd like to close this up so that it's ready for Stacy to present next Monday.
Do you want to say, when you say Friday, you want to say Friday by 9 a.m.?
If it's anything that's going to require some major modification, yeah, Friday, you know, just Friday by lunchtime would be great.
Okay, give staff some time, and then you'll copy everybody else on it. Okay,
Good deal.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, good job. And, you know, as we said before, we're very fortunate in the city of Milton to be discussing things like what we're going to spend money on and having a balanced budget and being fiscally responsible. So you guys have done a great job. So glad we're not in the shape that a lot of cities are and counties and government. All right, we want to bring up our next
Yeah,
item.
we're going to talk about Better World Books tonight. I'm going to kind of just frame it, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Ward from Better World Books to talk to you. He's approached, the city approached me specifically about the possibility of bringing some of his book, Recycling Drop-Off Points, into the city of Milton. The proposal tonight focuses around asking to potentially locate on city-owned property, being the 4 parcels that we have, the 3 fire stations and Bell Memorial Park. You know, he and I have discussed it. I'm going to let him kind of give you his little sales pitch, I guess, first. Probably not really a sales pitch, and then, you know, I'll be here to answer questions and ultimately figure out if this is something that we have interest.
They don't have any
on
interest, Steve.
on our city park.
Ran everybody off too.
Everybody else. So while Steve starts, he's brought 2 pieces of paper. I'm going to bring them up there to y'all, let him make a little presentation, and then we'll have a discussion.
Thanks, Chris. I'd like you to take a look at the little flyer, little brochure that Chris is going to hand out. It tells a little bit about who we are, what we're about, and that kind of thing. There's also a copy of the proposal which we submitted to Chris maybe a month or so ago. But if you'll just quickly look over the brochure, I think it might give you a better feel for who we are, what we're about, and that kind of thing. And now, if I may, I'll take just a couple minutes and kind of fill in the blanks about who we are and that kind of thing. So, first of all, I probably delivered this sales pitch, as Chris described it, to 10 or 12 different commissions and council chambers around Metro Atlanta at this point. And I guess I'm never ever quite sure where to start. I start by saying that if I would do this job even if they didn't pay me to do it, because I'm so engaged with what we're about and how we go about it that it's a joy for me every day to get up and go to work and to do what we do. Better World Books is the largest socially responsible online bookseller in the world. We sell to every country in the world. Every book that we sell goes in some part to a literacy partner somewhere in the world. Of the $10 million that we have raised, and that flyer you have is a little dated, but we've raised about $10 million to date for literacy initiatives around the globe. About $5 million of that goes to local public libraries. The other $5 million or so goes to, nonprofits such as Books for Africa, Invisible Children, National Center for Family Literacy, et cetera. So in addition to in the dollars that we raise from the sale of our books, we also donate books. We've donated nearly 6 million books to date, and we don't feel like that's enough. As a matter of fact, by virtue of that, we just introduced what we call a book for book program, which means that for every book that we sell through our program online, we also donate a book in kind to a child in need somewhere in the world. So in addition to the $6 million that we've already donated, we really wanted to kind of up the ante a little bit, even for ourselves. We're considered probably the poster child for social capitalists in the United States. I think we probably more than 600 companies have sort of modeled who they are and their existence off of exactly how we got started and how we do things. But we do have two important components. One's a social component, which we've already talked about, which is the donation of books and the sale of books, giving back to the community and back to public libraries. The other component is an environmental component. And as you can see from this little brochure, again, sort of fill in the blanks, we've received 2 EPA Gold Standards Awards. Now, that may not mean very much to you, but 2,700 to 2,800 companies a year apply for these Gold Standard Awards. And we're the first company ever to win them back-to-back in 2 separate categories. So in addition to all of the social good that we do, we've also been recognized nationally with our environmental projects and the things that we do. I don't know if you guys realize it or not, but there's not a very good alternative for people to do something with books. I have good friends at Waste Management and SP and Pratt and Waste Pro and all these guys that run around servicing our garbage needs and that kind of thing. And they all allow us to put our drop boxes at their recycling locations at their plant. There's a very good reason for it. They don't want books, and because they don't know what to do with them. And so as a consequence, people don't know what to do with their books either. Could any of you guys even venture to guess how many books wind up in Georgia landfill every year? Did you even take a wild guess?
Millions. I'd say millions.
60 million pounds of books. Those are books that have a second life, books that could be reused for greater good, because people don't know what to do with their books. So that's the kind of outlet that we try to provide, and in terms of partnering with the city, the funding that we would generate from the sale of books that are responsible on the Milton properties would go back to Milton Grows Green in terms of their funding for environmental literacy in the schools. And then another portion of that would go back to media centers associated with the schools here in the Milton area. So, would like for you to consider our proposal. I think what we have to do and how we go about it kind of speaks for itself. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
You want to, go ahead and ask any questions right now for Steve?
No, go ahead. Joe. Did you have something?
I'll.
No. I was going to see if there's anything now, and then Chris, let him speak too, and then if there's questions, Steve.
Certainly ask your questions. I'll tell you, Steve and I have met many times, and in the spirit of full disclosure, I want to tell you what I've told Steve, is that I really can appreciate what the Better World Books Company does. The reason I have, to this point, not been overly energetic about moving this forward is because I see the big green box as a four-sided sign, and it's a big sign. And I just said that's not something that I think necessarily sits out on the road in Milton and captures the character of Milton. I appreciate what you're doing, but I think the manner in which the box sits there, I'd like to think after 5 years I probably have at least captured in my own brain what the character of Milton is, and I don't know that that is it. So in the spirit of full disclosure, that's why I've said, Steve, I'll get you in front of the council. My at least preliminary objection thus far, and Steve's well aware, has been the design and look of the box itself. So I just throw that out there because I've said it before. I wanted to say it.
Have any of you guys, or has everybody seen these?
I haven't seen them.
No, you haven't.
I mean, I think I've seen them. I
One
just
over
don't
Northwestern Middle School.
know what it looks like.
Yeah, we do have one at Northwest Middle School, and we also have one at Crab Apple Crossing Elementary School. We also have some at the Alpharetta Department of the governmental center down there. We have them at Wills Park. So we have quite a few around. We have actually in Georgia and Metro Atlanta, we have about 400 drop boxes around, and it's pretty interesting with respect to the sign commentary. And Chris mentioned this to me some time ago, and it's kind of, it strikes me as a little odd because, we run into cities and governments that are just object to the drop boxes themselves because they have city code or ordinances or that kind of thing. I've never ran into a city though that viewed us as a sign. They do view us as a drop box, but having said that, we're prepared to address that issue, I guess, if you will. Most of the cities and counties that we do business with have frankly determined that they believe what we do and the way we go about it and how we go about it kind of outweighs the codes, if you will, or the objections that the community might have with respect to the boxes themselves. A lot of them see it as a statement in the community that the community is there to serve, that they're there to recycle, they're doing something sustainable for the environment, and they're doing some social good as well. So I know the box stands out. It was designed to stand out on purpose. It takes about 60 days for people to start honing in on our box when they start donating books, and so it's designed that way sort of for a reason. And but I can fully appreciate the fact that that there's objection to it.
How big is the box? As compared to that recycling bin back there.
4 times.
Okay.
About 4x4.
Yeah. I was going to say like 6x6 or something like that.
Do you have the dimensions?
Of a box, one of your boxes.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
How large is one of your boxes? 4x4 or 5x5?
It's about a 4x5. It takes up about a fourth of a parking spot, something like that. It holds, when it's full, about 900 to 1,000 pounds of books. So it's a fairly substantial. It's not as big as a waste management bin or one of those big dumpster type things. And frankly, it's a lot more attractive than those. We don't allow rust on those bins. We don't allow them to be. I'm sorry?
Did you bring a picture of one? I can go back to my office.
I do.
Unless you have one in the room.
That's not the issue.
I'm having a hard time understanding why it's a sign.
It's big.
Those are just some different designs that we have for our drop boxes. But so I mean, I don't know if that's a major objection with respect to whether or not you would accept our proposal, then I'm quite willing to hear what changes you might like to see in the drop box, and perhaps we could accommodate that.
And to clarify, I guess, with the proposal, say this, but I'm sure the city would have the ability to place or say where they're placed within the facility.
Right, I would
If it's a
think.
fire station or
yeah,
park
I think
or-
that we would want to have some ability to influence where, if we decide to go down this route, we need to have some ability to influence where on our property they go. Obviously there's
So it'd have to be a mutual.
it's going to have to be mutually agreeable, because I can say I want to put it behind the building so it's not visible from the road.
Yeah.
And Steve's going to say that doesn't do a darn thing for me, because nobody's going to know it's there. So it would have to be something that would be mutually agreeable, yes. Yes.
Do you have one at the Roswell Recycle Center?
We don't. We have a proposal very similar to this one in front of the city of Roswell. Actually, the city of Roswell has been pretty reasonable to work with. They actually changed their ordinance, the city ordinance, to allow us to put our drop boxes out there. And initially they wouldn't allow drop boxes put in the city that was they were designed for nonprofits only. And so they changed the law to actually let us, as a for-profit company, as a social enterprise, they changed the law to allow us to put our drop boxes out. Our proposal for Roswell is to put out 19 drop boxes, and as a matter of fact, they're considering it tomorrow night. And our plan is to put out 4 in the recycling center.
You know what, and maybe too, explain what surrounding cities here, Alpharetta, you mentioned Roswell, what other cities,
Yeah, we've managed to work, several things actually taking place with cities tomorrow. At 9 o'clock, we're meeting with the Cobb County Commission. That's a proposal for 14 locations in Cobb County, actually 15 locations in Cobb County. I'm meeting with the fire department in Atlanta tomorrow with the fire chief, Chief Cochran. And that's to put out 20 drop boxes at their fire stations throughout the city. We had a kickoff last week with the city of Norcross. Bucky Johnson over there and his staff really invited us in with open arms, and they did a big deal. They actually put one of our drop boxes at the courthouse, and we're now looking for additional locations around the city. The city of Decatur, we probably have about 15, and the city itself is considering another 15 locations there. The city of Smyrna has also been very nice in helping us get out drop boxes. Gosh, I could go on this.
But I think you do have them in Alpharetta, right?
We have them out in Alpharetta. Has agreed to allow us to put our drop boxes at the government center and out in certain areas called light industrial areas within Alpharetta. So we have out about probably 6 or 8 in Alpharetta. We have a few more than that out in Roswell. Johns Creek has a very significant zoning ordinance about drop boxes, even though they will allow us to put them back, as Chris suggested, out of the way, but the problem is nobody can see them. So what they have done, in lieu of allowing us to put our drop boxes out, they're doing a community-wide book drive it'll be the first of its kind. I guess when they signed it, they have 10 different waste management companies that deal with the city, and so they wrote into their contract with the waste management companies that once a year they had to do something that was socially good, and they had to donate time, money, and effort from these waste management companies to do something. So during a week in October, the citizens over there, and they're making a big deal out of it, they're going to put out boxes in the recycling bin, and they're going to send around special recycling trucks to pick up books. We expect to get more than 100,000 books out of that particular drive. So even where they have, where they've resisted, if you will, the donation boxes, they found other ways in which to work with us and to accommodate, their own, notion of sustainability and try to do what's right for the community.
Sure.
I was just going to say, I think it's a great creative solution. And I know, Steve, you and I have talked before
Right.
about other communities that have had some difficulty because of the size and with some of the billboard litigation that's out there, that there's an issue of precedent potentially for some of those legal issues.
Sure.
I love the idea, though, of being able to come up with kind of an alternative approach that still speaks to the benefit of recycling books, finding that balance between, obviously, to Chris's point, the sensitivity to kind of the look and feel of an area without having to set a precedent potentially about signage, but that would still allow Better Books to do what you guys do well and still be in concert kind of with the mission of the city in terms of some of our zoning regulations. Is that something that they're doing? So from a communication standpoint, I think it was Johns Creek you mentioned that's doing kind of a drive and it's a specific time frame. And I just wonder if we could do something similar to that. And then when you mentioned light industrial, I know that on 140 where we have waste management, the landfill that's there, I mean, that could be a location where obviously folks are coming to recycle anyway. So I like some of the creative ideas that I think that Better Books has pursued. I know you mentioned that they are open to redesigning the bins or maybe placing them in a location where it wouldn't be a negative in terms of just the
Well,
signage.
yeah, I guess, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think they're beautiful, and some people might also think they're beautiful, but some people don't. I understand.
I mean, it's not me. It's
I'm
a
being
function
facetious.
of, and I think it would be helpful maybe for Ken. I think separate from tonight, we probably need a little bit of input from Ken in terms of
Yeah.
precedent, especially because we're in the midst of some billboard litigation that is pretty meaningful to our community. And I personally, I think, and I support Better Books and I support the initiative. I am concerned, however, about what sort of precedent it potentially could set since we're in the midst of a billboard litigation. And I think we would need to
Said something
get
that-
some attorney
I'm sorry.
input.
I would suggest to you then, tell me what you don't like about the box, and then tell me what you think we might need to have to strip off of that in order to become into compliance. Now, I'm not suggesting.
Well, let me
you do
stop
it.
for a second here.
Okay.
And while Ken's here, and I don't know if you're familiar with this at all, you may not have
I'm
even
familiar
seen,
with what I've heard, and Chris and I talked about it.
and yeah, talk about legally, because I can agree with everything that's brought up, but I also think, in some ways, it also is a sign to people that, hey, City of Milton's proactive in recycling. So, you can look at it both ways, but I'd certainly like to hear some legal opinion on if you've got any.
Well,
Yeah, well, to me, it's not about the collection box. I mean, you can drive around town and see Goodwill Industries collection boxes. You can see all kinds of collection boxes that are in the city right now. So,
Sure.
I mean, obviously the city somehow allows those collection boxes to exist. The issue is the one that we've already been talking about. Those are not-for-profit organizations that have, not that their ideas and goals and bottom lines aren't similar to the triple bottom line that you guys talk about. It's just that you guys are a for-profit organization, and you'd be partnering with the city. We'd be sponsoring your locations, and then that sort of opens up the door, I think, as
Yeah,
Councilmember Sonner Bailey mentioned.
I understand the sentiment. Frankly, we're a lot more transparent, if you will, than most of the nonprofits. I mean, it's
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
I understand, but some of the other people you just mentioned though, but SP Pratt, other management companies, those are all for profit. They all have boxes and bins, and they all have signage on them. So I would suggest that Goodwill may be the only exception that I can think of where I see their locations. I don't know of any others actually in the city of Milton, but there could be others.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm real familiar with Better World Books. I mean, I've got
Okay.
3 kids in college. You guys are one of the
Well,
best
if you-
places I go to buy textbooks on a regular
if you've got
basis.
kids in college and you've used our website, you've saved yourself a lot of money.
Yeah. So and familiar with the history of the
Sure.
company and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I would be in support. I think that we need to get some guidance from our attorney
Sure. I
on
understand.
what it means to partner with a public.
A couple thoughts come to mind. I mean, first of all, I think there is something different between the for-profit and the non-profit aspect of it. I think it's undeniable. That is in fact the case, although our folks used to work for a for-profit hospital, they were quick to tell you that means they're tax paying, which is the way they like to spend it. But a couple things. First of all, once you go down that avenue of allowing a for-profit entity to put up something on your property, no matter the cost, no matter how good it is, it does raise the issue of, well, what if there is another entity that comes and would like to put something on that space, and maybe the cause isn't quite as noble, but it's in the eye of the beholder how noble it is too sometimes. And sometimes that gets into a tough line drawing exercise for governments as to which cause we will therefore anoint and which cause we won't. You also have a little bit of an issue, and again, this is really right off the top of my head, whether or not there would be a ground lease involved here. If we're going to allow a for-profit entity to take advantage of basically capital improvements that we have placed in improvements on property, and quite frankly, optimal space for both advertising and presence, would we require a ground lease and some sort of a reasonably commercially reasonable payment for that space? I mean, if it was Coca-Cola, would we? If it was some other private entity, would we do that for their advertising space and for their presence on our property? We might. So I raise those only to go to some of your thoughts about the precedent issue. I'm not as concerned with respect to the litigation aspect as I am with these other issues. But I think, Councilmember Zotto-Bailey, you were making more the point about precedent, which I agree with. I'm not sure that I equated as much with the billboards, although to Chris's point, it is signage, it is a message, and it's a message that people want displayed, and so we do get into that a little bit. But I'm more concerned, I think, with the notion of just the presence on our property, and at the end of the day, I mean, it's to get those books and then to obviously sell them, and to make money for the corporation.
What's the difference then, Ken, in this for-profit and community waste service that's got their dumpster right there and at Bell Park?
I'm sorry, the entity.
I mean, and then you look right there, we're letting CWS put there. And I'm not saying anything bad about that, but it's here and it's at Bell Park.
I assume that's pursuant to a contract that we have with them to be our waste disposal corporation. And I'm not suggesting to you that therefore they've allowed to put the signage here that has some value to them. But I can paint a distinction. They're providing the city of Milton a service that we need, which is to get rid of our recycled and our solid waste. The fact that there's a little bit of anecdotal advertising or ancillary advertising going along with that, fair enough. But I think the reality is that they are providing the city of Milton directly a direct benefit, and that to me takes care of a lot of the concerns.
Because saying they're making money off of that too.
That's correct. They're making money, but they're providing a equal benefit that we have to have.
So why would their recycling be more important than ours? About 70% of the books that we get are properly recycled, and there's no other alternative means to recycle books except us.
Are you talking about the recycle bin right there?
Hold on. We can answer the question. Bill has a question.
Yeah, no, I think the
Joe,
difference is that the city of Milton needs trash disposal to function as a government. We have paper, we have debris, we've chosen to recycling as a part of that. And no matter how laudable the goal, we don't probably need to recycle books to make the city of Milton operate, do we? I'm not aware that we do.
We don't have to, but it's
That's my only point. That's not in any way meant to diminish what they're doing. I'm just trying to give you legal ideas as to what could be a problem.
okay. Bill,
Going back to the precedence standpoint, we do have several waste collection services in the city. They all compete. Suppose we got a competing organization, It's a Better World, out here. We've already granted them permission or lease or whatever the agreement is to operate or place their boxes out here. 3 other organizations, similar organizations, pop up here in the near future. Are we obligated to provide them the same rights, privileges, contracts, agreements
Well,
to
I mean,
operate here in
again,
equal amounts, too?
We're having a discussion, sort of, I'm having to act like you're not there.
Okay,
You know,
you
it's
can-
a
I'll
discussion
pretend, I'll pretend. I can actually-
with my counsel, but I mean, that's part of the issue. The next very important and very laudable enterprise may be a collection of clothing. And it's a terribly important mission, and we get that, but they're going to at least have a little bit of horsepower to say, why would you deny me? Why is putting clothing on people that need clothing less desirable than this other? And that's the issue you get into. I don't know that it would leave us without the ability to ever say no, but it would certainly give them a much stronger argument to say, you're denying me almost an equal protection sort of argument. You gave one for-profit access and location, and then you're denied it to me. Why? And that's where you get into the uncomfortable situation. I'm not trying to talk you out of this at all. I'm just trying to tell you those are some of the issues you're going to have to deal with.
Okay, Alan?
Thanks, Mayor. The number that was provided as far as the estimates of the number of books that you think you could get in a year was 42,964 with the bins in your proposal.
The environmental number in the proposal?
It says over 1 year we expect to reuse or recycle 42,964 books.
Yeah, let me tell you where that number
Okay.
comes from. We have an environmentalist on staff, and so what they do is they calculate. Actually, what we did, we took a calculation of one drop box, and I mentioned to you that and we just had to take averages because every drop box is different. Some of them fill up once a week, some of them fill up once a month. So what we did, we took on average a drop box filling up about once a month. And it collects about 900 to 1,000 pounds of books. We threw that number out, right? And so over the course of a year, one drop box would collect about 11,000, 12,000 pounds of books. And what that further calculates is that saves about 126 trees. It saves about 58,000 gallons of water and about 27,000 kilowatts of electricity. And if you multiply that by the number of potential drop boxes that we wanted to put out in the city of Milton, then that's how we came up with those numbers. And you take it a step further, our opportunity in the metro Atlanta, 22 or 23 counties, of roughly 800 drop boxes. So when you start multiplying those kinds of numbers, then you come up with a very, very significant environmental impact number.
And I'm just comparing that 42,964 with the number that you stated that you project from the book drive that you're going to be able to do, or they project you're going to have 100,000 books collected in Johns Creek by reworking the contracts with the waste collection companies and having a book drive. That's over twice as much.
That's their guesstimate. That's
Okay.
not mine. That was what James Swope, who runs their environmental group over there, their waste management group, that was his guesstimate on how many they thought they could collect in 1 week's time.
So I could see that as a real positive partnership, as well as I guess I just see that advantageous to be able just to drop the books off at a box at your street corner, or just at the street, rather than take them to collection sites at these locations.
And I guess that's the whole point of our Dropbox program, is that it just allows people the convenience to do that. And again, I can appreciate all the arguments. I've heard all the arguments. We do a couple of things that you're never going to find another typical Dropbox company doing. That is, we have an established set of SLAs associated with the way we handle and treat our business. We guarantee 24-hour pickup. Somebody calls us and says our box is full. We guarantee 24-hour pickup. If there's any trash ever around any of our locations, we make sure it's cleaned up. Whether it's mattresses, we don't get them, but if it were, we'd pick them up and take them away. We just go the extra mile to make sure that because we know the reputation that bins attract generally, and we've tried to differentiate ourselves significantly from what other people do in the way we conduct ourselves. So, and I put any of those kinds of commitments in writing to the city. We've done that already. And you're not going to get, you're not going to find other companies like ourselves to come back and say, we're going to commit X amount of money back to the city, we're going to commit X amount of money back to Milton Groves Green, we're going to donate, a significant amount of books. For every book we sell, we're going to donate a book. We're going to keep the property clean. We're going to, I can list 10 different standards that you're not going to find anybody else that's going to make those kinds of commitments, not even Goodwill. So we do differentiate ourselves, and for the right reasons.
Joe, I think did you have?
No, I think we've talked about it enough.
Okay. Anybody else? Julie?
I was just going to say that maybe as a stopgap, as we evaluate these other things, I just wonder, Steve, especially with the fact that you guys are kind of pursuing this kind of a community drive in Johns Creek and hope to see so much positive out of that, if that wouldn't be maybe a first step, is to see if we couldn't come up with an opportunity to really help promote a community drive, very much like what we've done where we, in concert with Roswell and other places, where we'll do a recycling event. And that event actually brings out possibly, and I think the numbers that you've mentioned may kind of bring that true, is that it may be that with a community drive, especially if we associated it with another event, and really put some positive community support around that we could probably drive a lot of very focused recycling just as an event-driven sort of scenario. So I think that has a lot of potential merit. So I would hope that maybe at least as one opportunity that might be one way that we could pursue some sort of a partnership.
Yeah, it's quite possible.
And I my thoughts on it are, and I'd love to see a book drive or whatever to, an event or whatever, but also to Councilmember Tartt's point, sometimes an awareness of where a drop-off location is, and, it's not where everybody puts on their calendar next February 28th or whatever, there's a book, a recycle, but, when you're cleaning the house or whatever, and I want to do something with these books, and here's an option or whatever. So I'd like to kind of hear back what some of the other cities do too, some of our surrounding cities and what they've done, and after you guys meet with them, see how they're handling that and the legal, because I see the legal points, but I also see, is there a handful of other companies doing this? I don't know. I haven't heard. So, even if you did it for a few years and, then they start popping up, then it's a bridge you have to cross. But it's, again, I think it's a good cause, no matter who profits by it, because if not, books are just going to get thrown away, if people don't really have an option to what to do with them. So,
one other quick thought, just as we're talking about this, obviously with libraries, and Steve, you and I may have talked about this a little bit, but I'm not sure. The Friends of the Alpharetta Library, obviously they have regular book sales for recycling. We're eventually, we don't know where that's going to be yet, but we're eventually going to have a Milton library. Again, if you set the bin aside, I think there's some real opportunities there for, again, if it's in a drive sort of scenario, or, if Better Books, and I know you were looking at this for some other communities, if you're redoing and redesigning those drop boxes or coming up with alternatives. We talked also about sometimes having boxes that are accessible without being right out in front of the street. So I know your company was looking at some different alternatives. But I just wonder if that's not also another great partnership for you guys, is looking to these organizations that are the nonprofits that are specifically tied to the Alpharetta Library and then eventually the Milton Library.
Yeah, we partner, Julie, with over 2,700 libraries around the country and about 2,200 colleges. A lot of those are huge friends groups.
Right.
Some friends groups are not all that friendly with us because they think we take their books. But anecdotally, the evidence which we have come up with over the last 8 years of our life has been that we don't impact the book donations to the libraries. People that were going to donate books to the libraries are going to donate books to the libraries, and it doesn't impact them. At least that's what we found.
And that just might be another. I know that there's some groups out there that are working to create a Friends of Milton Library, so that may be another good avenue for some conversation, just to see what would be a good partnership.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody else has anything? Chris, you got a couple
Just
things?
to mention before we adjourn. So
We good?
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you guys very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Steve.
Oh, yeah, we'll keep Steve's pictures. We'll be in touch. All right. Just two things I want to hand out to you for you to take with you tonight. There was some question as to what the Crabapple Park was going to look like.
Thank you.
And we just got the 90% in, so I want to give everybody a copy of this, just so you have an idea of what is being designed out there. Understanding that if it's on this map doesn't necessarily mean at build-out it gets built, right? So,
I mean, that it could be eventually.
It could be eventual, it could be, some of it's joint funded with PTA participation, et cetera. So I don't want you to think that all of a sudden, this is exact, but this is the vision for it, and we get most of the way there with available funding.
Would there be a way just with crayons or something that you could help identify, like when we get this handed out, you could just literally say, items 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that are really kind of a maybe that we shouldn't count on. Because I do think that's a really important point, is to be able to distinguish visually what's a hopeful and what's we're going to have.
Although the whole plan becomes more hopeful if you all appropriate the $140,000 into park enhancement.
Right.
This becomes really hopeful if we make that decision.
But are we thinking that 171 would all be to fund that?
No, we're not.
Okay.
No,
I think
not
that'll be.
at all.
I'll just say that'll be one of my questions
We're getting to the point now where
coming.
we're talking about, we get most of the way done with the play space gets done, the basketball gets done. There's a pavilion that's indicated here.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about like, is the pavilion going to have picnic tables in it or not?
Okay, so it's more minor details.
We're not, is there going to
Okay.
be, 14 trash cans or 2?
So it's not 140 versus
You're gonna do a
380.
book
It's
collection.
just
It depends on whether or not we
Okay.
open up in ribbon cut a full service park, or
Gotcha.
if we get it most of the way there and then work on a partnership.
okay. Thank you.
Second thing I'm going to hand. Yes.
What's the next step? You have the 90% drawings. What's the next step?
John's still here? Here's our expert.
Council. The next step is I have the internal plan review people reviewing it for erosion control. Hopefully, we're going to do that concurrently while they finish up to get to 100% plans. Then we're going to go out to bid. Hopefully, the bid is going out concurrently with the erosion control permit. They come in together. We come to award this project November. That's an aggressive timeline. Anything slows us up, we get pushed into December. Then the holidays come, etc. But that's the next step. We're close. I mean, we're really buttoning things up, and I'm pushing to bring this to you in November to award a
Terrific.
contract.
Thank you.
That's my goal.
Do we know what's going on with the house? I know there have been some discussions about the house that's on that site that Fulton County was,
I think it's going to be demoed.
okay, they were trying to sell it or something. And
Try to sell it on Craigslist.
okay, so Fulton County, this is not held up
They
on.
were. They were.
Aren't there any local citizens that might be interested?
It's just a
I
brick
wonder
ranch.
if-
On the slab.
The other thing I want to hand out to you, and I'm going to ask for a 24-hour response if this seems inappropriate to you. Do I?
Oh, I was just saying thanks to
No,
John.
thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
We've tried to put together at ARC's request the stakeholder team that will kind of be part of the LCI process. That team typically ends up between 16 and 18 people. They're requiring that representatives of staff, state, regional, and local agencies, as being like MARTA, CID, GDOT, et cetera, as well as representatives from residents, businesses, and property owners in Milton and in Alpharetta be assigned to this stakeholder team. Alpharetta has picked some. On behalf of Milton, we have kind of the bulk of the people on here. I just want to pass this out and don't necessarily need any direct feedback other than you think that we have just inappropriately made the selection. Recognizing that the people that are on this list have no idea they're on this list, right? So we don't want to be in a process where we uninvite people. I mean, that's a bad place to be. We're also, we see if they're interested and then say, oh, by the way, we changed our mind. So for the people that represent the boards or committees of the city of Milton that are on here, you'll see in that line it's listed the chair or designee. It could be anybody from the committee, but we need to at least start somewhere to say we're going to start here and then go to a designee of a committee. Okay, so again, ARC is looking for us to move forward, and so is Urban Collage looking to move forward with making initial contact of this stakeholder group. So if you'll just give this a scan, let me know if you think that there's any that are just inappropriate to the next 7 months of planning for the city of Milton, and we'll move forward with getting these key stakeholder team notified. Recognizing that don't pay attention, there's 3 on here that Alpharetta picked, and nights going out.
And on the stakeholder group, can you just give a 15-second rendition of, do you expect this group to really drive it, or do you expect them to in turn help within their communities to gather and garner input?
You know, and I let Michelle go home to spend time with her kids because I said, I got that, Michelle. To the extent that, honestly,
It varies.
their
The word
involvement,
stakeholder,
it varies.
it
Yeah,
varies.
I do know there's about 7 months of planning. That was not Michelle that just texted me. Look, this is the question
I would be very impressed.
I was like, oh, come on, be Michelle.
Couldn't
So
have
I
planned
can
it
look
any
really,
better.
really cool. Here's my Michelle, not the Michelle that's been on this question. So I don't know the answer to that. I know it takes about 7 months
Okay.
of planning, and these are the people that are going to be, part of that, representing their area. I guess.
I'll assume that from that, there'll be other community meetings and things where it pulls folks in and input. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll pass these down the road. You'll take one of each. That's all I have. It's just those couple of housekeeping issues.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ken, Carter, rest of the staff, Dave.
Thank you.
To go to this ARC webinar.
Yes.
Oh, it's a webinar.
Yeah, David, we're done.
I haven't, it's in my inbox. I didn't look at it today, but yeah, when is it? If it's a webinar, we don't have any choice. It's a really cool little park.
That budget book is, the print is way too small for me. It's like, I mean, I can read it, but a couple of times I was like, why are we spending 90,000? Oh, that's 10,000. Sorry. Okay, never mind. Yeah.
We got on a